Hey everyone, here we go with chapter 5, video number 3, and we're going to be talking about the Roman achievement. So far in this chapter, we've discussed a few aspects of Roman culture, such as their love of big public entertainment like gladiator fights, but it's mostly been about the history of the Republic and Empire. In this video, we're really going to get into more of the cultural achievements of Roman civilization. Let's start with Roman literature. Now, before I get into examples of Roman literature, it's very important to understand that Roman culture borrowed heavily from the Greeks in a lot of areas: art, literature, philosophy, even religion. Remember back in section 1, we discussed how Roman religion was basically copying all the Greek gods and giving them different names. So literature was no different. Greeks loved their epic poems, so the Romans did too. And the most famous of these Roman epic poems was the Aeneid. So as I just said, it was an epic poem, meaning it was really, really long. And it was written by this guy, Virgil. Now, Virgil wanted to show that Rome's past was full of heroes and amazing stories like the Greeks. His story was about a hero, Aeneas, who was a member of the royal family of Troy. In the Greek epic poem, the Iliad, Troy is destroyed by the Greeks after they use the Trojan horse to sneak in. So as you see in this depiction, Aeneas escapes the destruction with his father and a couple of other of his family members, has a bunch of adventures, and then two of his descendants, Romulus and Remus, would go on to found Rome. So this whole story was a way to link Roman history with Greek mythology. He also hoped it would spread patriotism, create a sense of unity and pride among the Romans. Many Roman historians focus more on Rome's greatness and war heroes, but Greek philosophy was another area that borrowed heavily from the Greeks, especially this field called Stoicism. Stoicism stressed duty and responsibility. You look at the quote there. The purpose of life is happiness, which is achieved by virtue, okay? This kind of responsibility that you have, living according to the dictates of reason. That was a big connection that they made with the Greek philosophers, guys like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. Now, let's take a look at Roman art and architecture, which, you guessed it, copied a lot from Greek style. Roman art stressed realism, especially when it came to sculptures. Hold on, let me move myself up here. There we go. Okay. So remember back when we learned about Greek art, we talked about how Greek sculpture stressed realism. They tried to depict the human form in its real way and also its ideal way. The Romans took it to another level. You look at the detail that you see in not only the facial expressions, but also even in kind of like this one up here, particularly. I don't know why it's not right in there. There we go. The muscle tone, okay, you see like the shoulder blade and and the bone structure and so forth. Really, really very, very impressive level of realism that they were able to get in their sculptures. Mosaics, though, were a little different. Mosaics were popular artwork that was done on walls. They were pictures made up of many colored stones of pieces of glass and little chips like tiles and things like that. They were popular in the homes of the wealthy, but as you can see from the picture, they didn't really concern themselves too much with realism. Architecture was similar to the Greeks in style, but they went bigger. The Romans wanted to do everything bigger and grander. They had huge palaces. They had temples. These were monuments to their achievement. The most famous of being the Colosseum. It's fallen into ruins over the last couple of thousands of years, but still the fact that it's still standing and it was so big really was a testament to Greek architecture and how big they can make things. Roman architects also made extensive use of domes. Now, the dome was something that was not really used by the Greeks. Famous example of that is the Pantheon. This was built as a temple to Jupiter, the chief of the Roman gods, and you see the dome up here on the top. It was a structural innovation that allowed them to build bigger. All right, it stabilized things at the top. You see from the inside, it would have an opening called the oculus that would allow both sunlight and fresh air into it. But the use of a dome is going to be a popular architectural style that you're going to see in later civilizations that the Romans were big on making innovations in. All right, so we've discussed at great length how the Romans copied the Greeks in a number of areas, but there were other fields that the Romans did their own thing, namely science. The Greeks were big on art and they were big on these high-minded concepts such as the nature of the universe, but the Romans were more into practical applications of math and science. For instance, they excelled in engineering. Engineering is applying science and math to build useful things. They built roads, they built bridges, but they did this very, very well. So let me put me in the right here in the middle. Vast road networks and all of these bridges, they kept trade flowing, and they allowed the military to move quickly. If the legions needed to get from one point to the other, the road networks allowed them to do it very quickly and very efficiently. Some of these roads, some of these bridges, as you can see from the photographs, they're still in existence today. I mean, maybe the roads aren't used as major highways, but the fact that they're still around was an impressive testament to the engineering skill of the Romans. Roman engineers also showed tremendous ingenuity in building. There we go. Aqueducts. Aqueducts are bridge-like structures that transported water from the hills into Roman cities. Romans were able to pipe fresh water into their cities. They had public baths. They had indoor plumbing in some of the houses of the wealthy. So they were very, very far ahead of the time when it came to the use of fresh water and getting it from point A to point B. So while they excelled at engineering and practical use for building things, science, as I said before, that was mostly done by the Greeks. Romans didn't show a lot of interest in things like physics or astronomy, and so they didn't leave much of a lasting legacy in any of those areas. A field in which Rome left a big legacy, though, was law. Now, law is probably Rome's greatest legacy. Roman society was committed to the law, to the rule of law and justice. It created a sense of order, of unity, of stability. Roman law was practically worshipped, as you can see here, with them making sacrifices, at the reading of the 12 tables, those early law codes that we talked about a couple sections ago. And also, as we discussed in previous sections, Roman law was applied equally in all the provinces. It made people in the outer provinces feel a part of Roman society, even if they were thousands of miles from Rome itself. Roman law was divided into, two codes. Codes are just systems of laws, right? We talked about like the Code of Hammurabi. The first was civil law, which was only for citizens. Okay, so civil law originally was only for Roman citizens. The other was this thing called the Law of Nations. This was applied to everyone living in Roman territory, whether you were a citizen or not. These two systems were later going to merge as Rome expanded citizenship to people throughout the empire. Now, Roman law left a long-lasting legacy that would influence many later systems of law. A lot of the basic principles of Roman law are recognizable to Americans today. For instance, the concept that someone accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty, that originated in Rome. This was not the case in many ancient legal codes, where the person accused was responsible to prove his or her innocence themselves. It's not the way that it worked in Rome. It's not the way that it works in American law today. Also, proving that somebody is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's something that goes back to Roman times. Now, there were some other ones, and we're going to talk more about those in class, but it's important to understand the legacy that Roman law left even into the modern day. So that was just a quick overview about some of Rome's cultural achievement, and we'll stop here, and in the next video, we'll get into the rise of Christianity.